CFT highlights tips for more productive meetings. One of the biggest challenges people have is identifying the purpose of the meeting. They know compliance and timeframes, that they have to have certain types of meetings, but the big picture gets lost. Why are we having all of these meetings? Our objective is to make the most out of our required meetings for our families. We want to get away from overly focusing on categories of meetings and help people critically think about what is happening in the family's life, what questions are coming up, and what needs to be addressed. So let's look at the life of the case. Throughout the duration of the case, we always have the same goals for children: safety, permanency, and well-being. We start out with a safety threat, and that brings up questions such as, can the child safely remain in the home? Network support. So we may need to have a CFT meeting focusing on safety, and we evaluate the support that the family has and what their natural helping network can do to assist them with safety. We might determine that a child has to be placed out of home because we are unable to mitigate a safety threat. What kinds of questions come up? What would our purpose be, and who should we invite? Let's see. We have placement issues, linkages, behavioral health questions, visitation concerns. That's a lot of topics to discuss. Can we make this a little more efficient? Placement and visitation issues are related. Can we have a meeting about those things together? And what about addressing the parents' worries about their income at the same time? We will likely want to have the linkages discussion with just the family, the CalWORK social work specialist, and PSW, since we're discussing the family's private personal income. But placement and visitation kind of overlap. We don't have to have two separate meetings if the same people are involved in the same discussion. What would we need to do to make this all happen? Well, we need to figure out who needs to participate in which part of the discussion and arrange for them to come to the meeting at specific times so that the meeting feels seamless to the parents. We want to stop thinking about distinct categories of meetings and start focusing on what we would like to address and accomplish during our team time together. What is the primary purpose that we are gathering? Let's go back to our case. The parent gets into residential drug treatment. What questions and issues arise now? What do we need to discuss? Which members of our team need to be invited to participate? Family treatment court, case planning, visitation again, placement. What happens if the parent leaves the program? And now what types of questions arise? Who would be helpful to assemble at the table, and how do we make this happen? Is the child depressed or having new behavioral health issues as a result of the recent trauma? Maybe a CFT-BH meeting is needed again. Where is the child going to be placed? What is our concurrent plan? Could we find a permanent placement that could address all of the child's needs? It would be great if we could address plan, placement, and permanency together. How can we make our discussion efficient and serve the family well? Where do we need to have the meeting? Could we have it in the field? Yes, we could. Try to critically and consciously think about what the issues are in the case that are impeding progress toward our goals of safety, permanency, and well-being. We want to make the time we spend together as a team with the family supports and friends meaningful. To do that, we need to identify purpose. So let's try again. Life happens, events unfold, the parent returns. Some possible questions we may seek to answer now may be the following. We may have linkages concerns, visitation questions, maybe pair those discussions back to back so that the family only has to come in once. Maybe we hold a case planning discussion where we can discuss the next steps as well as visitation and permanency. The point is to look at what is happening in the family's life and where you are in the case in relation to the goals, and consider what the issues are that you need to address. Then plan a meeting around those things. More Life continues with more questions we will want to gather with the team to address. Maybe members of the team need to address education issues. Maybe it's more convenient for the team to meet at the school. Maybe we need to discuss time maybe we need time to discuss permanency and connections again, and so on. So concentrate on purpose so it makes sense for the family and for you. Quite often we have requests from ER for safety and placement meetings only to find out that a referral is being closed and there's clearly no safety or placement issues to discuss. What we want to discuss are the next steps for the family, and that's okay, but we do better in planning the meeting thinking about who to invite and what types of things we need to think about if we know our purpose from the start. Why does the scheduler still ask you what kind of meeting you want? She's going to ask you the primary purpose so she can figure out who she is responsible for inviting to the meeting. The child and family team meeting is driven not by compliance, but by who, what, why, when, how, and where questions. The who for a CFT, child and family team, must always involve the child and/or family, the PSW, and it must be facilitated. Other members of the team who should always be included are the extended family, friends, natural supports who make up the child and family support network, resources from their community, school, resource center, clinic, professional helpers such as therapists, drug counselors, regional center worker, etc. What and the why? This is really about the purpose. And the purpose is ensuring that kids are safe and stable and have what they need to grow because that's our job. When? Throughout the changes and challenges of life, as long as the case is open with FCS. So about every 60 days, we need to be checking in to see where we are with the case and evaluate how the child and family are doing in relation to their goals. How are we going to do this? Through joint assessment and solution-focused planning done together by the child and family team. Where are we going to do this? We should always be family focused and meet with the team at a time and location that makes sense for the child and family team. That means sometimes after school, after work, at a treatment program, in the foster home, at a resource center or visitation center, at the family's home, whatever makes sense for the family. We've had challenges with necessary people not being invited to the meeting and people being invited who have no idea why they're even present. Here's how to assess who needs to come. There are 3 main considerations for deciding who should be invited to a CFT, and that is support, assessment, and case planning. Support. Who is important to the family? Who do they feel has their back or is a person they can depend upon? Encourage the family to invite the people in their own natural network who they feel support them. Also invite people who you believe could be resources to the family in the issues you plan to discuss. What questions are you trying to answer? Who can answer or help address those questions? Who has information that could be helpful? Case planning. Who can you invite who will be an active part of the solution? Not just someone who will give advice and put in their 2 cents, but someone who is willing to take responsibility and will take action. Someone who might carry out a safety action, transport a child, accompany a parent, check in on a family, supervise a visit. Someone who is going to be part of the plan to ensure that the strategies and steps discussed are carried out as planned. Let's look at our guest list. Who do we often forget? Placement. We often forget the resource family assessment worker and the placement worker. These 2 individuals can be very helpful for a placement meeting, especially if you have a number of families who want to be considered for placement. They all are entitled to be assessed, but they can't all be assessed at once. So it's good to be able to prioritize. An RFA worker can help talk about what's needed for the assessment process and perhaps will help the family make that decision about who to prioritize first. The placement worker can be very helpful, especially if you don't know what the options are for placement and you know that you're going to need someone else other than a relative. Visitation. Remember to invite the visitation supervisor. Other people who can often be helpful for such a meeting are the transportation worker and a foster parent. Think about the fact that for a transportation worker, sometimes they have the child in their car 4 hours transporting 2 hours each way for a 2-hour visit. That individual can potentially be a good resource for information about the child's worries, how they're doing before and after the visit, and what might be helpful to make the visit more productive for the parent and child together. Permanency. Consider inviting the family finding worker, permanency worker, or an RFA worker for all of the issues that I mentioned above. Family finding worker can be especially helpful in figuring out who might be a potential resource to this child? Who might be a good connection? FRCs working with the family. FRCs used to be invited by the scheduler to most meetings, but the agency is now making efforts to be more intentional. No more blanket invitations. If families are working with a program, they or you may invite them. If you know the family is connected to an FRC or you want to introduce them to an FRC, please invite the FRC yourself. Peer parents are prioritized to attend only safety placement and initial behavioral health meetings. If a peer parent has an ongoing relationship with a parent, please be sure to invite the peer parent. Now, we only have one more party whose invitation is often overlooked. Does anyone know who that is? One of the most commonly forgotten parties who we forget to invite or who is sometimes intentionally overlooked is the youth. Should youth participate in CFTs? The answer is yes. All youth can participate in CFTs. There's a tendency for people to be afraid of having young people participate in CFTs. There are concerns about traumatizing the young person, talking about things that the young person shouldn't hear or isn't mature enough to understand, wanting to protect young people. But the thing is, child welfare is only involved with the young person and the young person's family because of some trauma that has already happened to the young person. And it's important to consider the young person's perspective and have them participate in the process of resolving the issues because they are already involved. What we want to emphasize is that these concerns need not be barriers if we consider our worries and we plan for them. Here are a few tips to encourage and promote youth participation in our CFTs. Think about how we can share information about the CFT process with the youth. We have a new flyer to help you explain the purpose of the Child and Family Team and CFT meetings. Let the young person know their voice and perspective is valuable and important for their team to hear. Encourage them to ask questions. Provide support to the youth to participate. Find out who is important to them and who could be invited to support them in a meeting. Help them plan and practice what they want to share. If they don't want to verbally share in a meeting, can their voice be introduced in another way? By having something written down and read, shared by someone else they appoint on their behalf? Would they give permission to have their safety house shared or circles of support? If they are uncomfortable participating for the duration of the meeting, plan so they can just participate in the beginning. We've had children as young as 3 years old successfully participate in person and share their perspective in meetings. Plan for logistics around the youth's needs. Talk to the youth about a time and place that would work for them. With advance notice, the teaming unit tries to accommodate visits in the field and at different times. We've had CFTs at schools, in foster homes, group homes, and as far away as Santa Cruz and Sacramento. Plan for safety. What does the youth need to feel safe in the meeting? Is there someone who can accompany them to a meeting and support them if they feel triggered? Does the youth only want to participate in a portion of the meeting or just with a few team members present? Can a signal be agreed upon with the PSW and facilitator if the youth needs to take a break? The idea is to think about how to make a meeting most successful for a youth. That leads us to the importance of checking in and debriefing. Why do we do this? Because being a team takes work. Even if things are going well and we are content with the way the team is functioning, it's important to reflect on our process and evaluate what we are doing, what we want to continue, and things we might like to tweak. Life and work together is a dynamic process, and there's always room for improvement. If we take the time to reflect on our process together, we can make our team work that much stronger and that much better by changing and adapting to the needs that present. It's how we strategize as a team for improvement. Now, don't let this chart scare you. Focus on the left, on the rainbow. This chart summarizes the different models of continuous improvement that Family and Children Services has rolled out over the years. They all follow the basic format of the scientific model you learned in grade school, then again in middle school, and again in high school. Look at the red line, the scientific method. First, we identify a purpose. We have a question that we ponder. We do a little background research and assess what we want to know about the issue and what we already know about the issue. Then we come up with an idea, a hypothesis, something we want to test out and try a little differently, and we do the experiment. Next comes the evaluation process, where we reflect on what we did and how it went. And finally, we think about what we learned and how we want to apply and implement that change moving forward. Let's look at this last line in purple. This is our CFT example. Our purpose is to try to improve what was a bad CFT meeting experience for a teen. How can we make the next one more positive? What if the meeting was teen planned? Would the teen's participation experience improve? Our assessment would involve debriefing after the meeting about what happened and what we observed. The teen was overwhelmed, the meeting was too long, and none of the teen's concerns were addressed. The adults talked too much. What do we want to try differently? What's our strategy for next time? Let's have the PSW meet with the youth to plan the date, time, and location. Let's encourage the teen to invite people who she feels are supports to her. Have the teen participate in creating an agenda to help her practice what she wants to share with her team. And then during a check-in with the facilitator, we'll share a code word that the teen and PSW have agreed upon to signal the teen's need for a break. The team would try this at the meeting, then review how it went, and keep the things that work and re-strategize how to address the things that they still want to change. Let's talk a little bit about safety. It's important to identify potential safety issues that may come up in a meeting. We've had several situations where we did not know about the domestic violence, anger, or violence, or the significant mental health issues of clients attending CFT meetings, and the clients became very agitated, resulting in supervisors and administrators running down the hall because of all the screaming. We need to know ahead of time about potential safety issues, so please be sure to share them with our scheduler when you book your CFT meeting, and check in with the facilitator before the meeting so we can troubleshoot. If we know potential risks ahead of time, we can develop a safety plan for the meeting. That may entail having a supervisor attend the meeting, having someone assigned to sit next to a particular party and to give a signal to take a break if the party is becoming agitated. We need to agree on a plan of what to do if a party escalates and who will do what. Often this comes up when a worker requests a meeting where there is domestic violence, but there's no restraining order. Talk with us ahead of time, and we'll likely ask you to sit down with each parent separately just to make sure that there isn't anything that we're overlooking. Again, we want to plan for safety. When we know there is the possibility of violence, we usually request the meeting be scheduled at Otis, where we have the capability of posting a security guard outside the room. We don't have that ability at any of our other sites other than Otis. Security guards are usually only available 8 to 5, but with advance notice, we may be able to have one after 5 p.m. They cannot intervene, but they can get more immediate assistance as another set of eyes and ears, and they can help escort a client out of the building if needed. CFT exemptions are requested using Form 1114. They always require program manager approval, and they should be submitted to the teaming clerk, who forwards them to the teaming supervisor to enter in CMS special projects. When should you complete an exemption form? You want to complete an exemption request to get credit for your good faith efforts to meet with the child and family team at least every 60 days per your agency's requirements. This is when you tried but were unable to meet with the family for a CFT meeting through no fault of your own. What does this look like? The family willfully failed to participate in a scheduled CFT. The classic version of this would be when you have an abandoned child, parents' whereabouts are unknown. This is different than a parent who can't make the meeting because they have to attend court on that date and time of the CFT meeting. You can reschedule that CFT. An unaccompanied minor may have a parent who lives outside of the country or a parent who is in jail. We can't assume that the parent does not want to participate or is unable to participate. These situations don't necessarily meet criteria for an exemption. Work with Community Works to see if the incarcerated parent can participate by phone. Contact the parent or embassy to see if the parent who lives in another country may be interested and able to participate in the CFT meeting by phone. The new ACL for documenting CFT meetings provides a way for PSWs to document provider-facilitated CFTs in CMS. Check out the quick guides to see how to enter your provider-facilitated CFTs in CMS to ensure you get credit for them. Another time exemption 1114 should be submitted is when the topic issue is not relevant for a CFT meeting. For example, we have non-minor dependent reentry cases and cases that go from legal guardianship to adoption, where an initial CFT-BH meeting would not be relevant. We also have occasional safety placement meetings in ER when the worker is planning to close the referral because there is no safety threat, nor will there be a placement. KDA. We continue to see a lot of confusion about initial KDA CFT meetings addressing coordination of behavioral health and CFTs addressing issues impacted by behavioral health. The CFT BH that should be held within 45 days of case opening is the initial behavioral health exploratory discussion and service coordination meeting between the bioparents, foster care mental health, or their representative, and the PSW. There are many other instances when a youth may have ongoing behavioral challenges that impact placement, educational services, permanency options, and that necessitate changes in case planning. PSWs may request a CFT to strategize how to address the youth's behavioral issues in relation to these issues. The bioparents may or may not always participate in these CFTs. Let's use a medical analogy to differentiate the initial KDA CFT-BH from other CFTs focusing on issues impacted by behavioral health. The initial KDA CFT-BH is like a patient meeting with a general practitioner to review worries and concerns, come up with a plan, coordinate general services, and get referrals to specialists to address specific issues. In CFT meetings focused on specific issues such as placement, educational programming, permanency that may be affected by the youth's behavioral health, the focus is on how to address the issues. The specialists may already be identified and participate in relevant discussion. This is where a treating psychiatrist, therapist, RAP team may be able to offer updates on assessments, progress, and strategies about intervention techniques. Let's talk about CFT safety meetings. ER is now investigating referrals on open cases as well as new referrals. More frequently, there are occasions in which safety issues span several programs. Perhaps FSU has an open case, but ER is investigating, and and RFA or placement are also involved. When identifying a safety threat, PSWs must be able to articulate the harm and danger in terms of an SDM safety threat. In each of the CFT rooms, we have a copy of the SDM safety threats and definitions. Be able to explain how the safety threat specifically impacts the child. That's the basis of our child welfare involvement. Know the agency's bottom lines. We've had several CFTs in which multiple programs were involved. ER and placement wanted to remove the child from a caregiver. The FSU worker was planning to safety plan. Each of the workers had been given different directives from their programs, and they were not on the same page. We must talk as an agency before we meet with families so that we are on the same page and don't contribute more chaos to the family situation. Remember that safety planning requires support other than the offending caregiver. Someone else who is not the offending caregiver must step in today to take an action that will establish immediate safety for the child. CFT safety deals with today, the here and now, and involves natural supports taking responsibility to initiate an immediate safety action that establishes safety for the child today. This is different than CFT case planning and next steps meetings, which are about planning for the future. They involve evaluating progress, establishing longer-term objectives, discussing supports and strategies to achieve objectives. Professional helpers who participate in CFT meetings can often offer case planning support, but they usually aren't able to provide safety support. All kinds of network support participate in case planning and next steps. We are in the process of trying to update the Shared Family Care Plan, which is often confusing for staff. As we talked about in the first slide, our goal is to encourage staff not to have meetings to satisfy compliance, but to be more intentional and critically think about how to make the meeting time more meaningful to the family, the guests who are invited to participate, and to the PSW. Think of the target worry as the purpose of today's meeting. It's the specific worry about case progress that you have right now. What is the most pressing issue keeping the family from progressing to the next step on the way to the big goal of achieving safety, permanency, and well-being? What is the reason that you are assembling the current team together? That's the purpose of today's meeting. Here are some examples. Harm and danger is a safety worry. The team is worried that Elroy was left unsupervised and was nearly hit by a car on the freeway when George passed out from drinking alcohol while caring for Elroy, and Elroy could be seriously hurt if this happens again. Placement. These may be concerns when presented with new information about a child. The team is worried that 4-year-old Bam Bam was recently diagnosed with an irregular heartbeat and could have a stroke if he does not receive close medical monitoring and daily medication. More worries about placement in education. The team is worried that Pebble's educational assessment indicates a possible language learning disability, and her instructors are unable to communicate with a foster grandmother who is monolingual. Behavioral health concerns. The team is worried that Charlie Brown may be traumatized after being pummeled and kicked by his mother and placed in foster care. Only after we've identified our purpose for having a meeting, the worry that we want to address, only then are we able and ready to think about who can help us problem solve the worry and who needs to be invited to participate in the discussion. The target goal is what we hope to resolve or answer by the end of our CFT meeting. Setting the goal is about having vision. It's about seeing beyond and thinking about how we want things to be different from the way they are now. Child welfare is only involved in families' lives because of the children, to ensure that children have safety, permanency, and well-being. Those are always our same goals. So the specific goals we establish for our CFT meetings must always focus on the children and how we want the situation to change for them to support their safety, permanency, and well-being. Let's go back to our examples of the purpose of the meeting. Take the first harm and danger statement. What do we specifically want to be different for Elroy? We want him to have a responsible, attentive supervision to keep him safe. Let's look at the placement worry. The team is worried that 4-year-old Bam Bam has a heart murmur. What do we want to be different for Bam Bam? We want Bam Bam to receive medical monitoring and medication to address his heart problems and to have a caregiver who can do that. Our case planning worry was that Pebbles may have a learning disability and that her foster grandmother is having difficulty supporting her. Is that a service concern or a placement concern? Or what? We don't know yet because we don't know all of the details and the resources that are available. They may all come out in our discussion. What we need to do and can do is identify our goal of what we want for Pebbles so that we know what we are trying to accomplish and we can invite relevant participants to help us more fully assess the situation and strategize what to do. Our goal for Pebbles is to receive support at home and at school for her language disabilities. Let's look at one more example. Our behavioral health worry about the trauma Charlie Brown experienced after being abused by his mother and placed in foster care. What is our goal to support Charlie Brown's safety, permanency, and well-being? It's that he receive support to address his trauma resulting from abuse and current placement. Let's put this all together. First, we look at what's going on in our case. Are there any worries and questions? Yes. What are they? Let's see. 2 aunties and a grandpa want the child. How soon can he be placed? Are they all willing to do permanency? He's very depressed and needs therapy. He was just diagnosed with diabetes. He hasn't had his court-ordered visit with his dad. We formulate our questions into a worry statement to define our purpose, which is what we want to work on. This is the purpose of the meeting that we write on the first page of the Shared Family Care Plan. Next, we identify our safety stability goal, what we hope to develop an action plan to accomplish by the end of the meeting. We think about how the issues we identify would look if they were resolved and are able to meet the child's safety, permanency, and well-being. We think about who is relevant to this discussion, who can help us answer the questions and problem solve the issue, and we invite them to the meeting. We do a pre-check with the scheduler and facilitator to identify any concerns about potential violence and safety in the meeting. There are none identified in this particular case. We decide to hold the meeting at a relative's home to accommodate the family team. Our goal is to continue asking questions and developing a team of people with the family at least every 2 months or more often. If needed, we will convene relevant members of the team to help assess the situation and answer the questions and resolve issues that impede progress toward our safety, permanency, and well-being goals for the child. Through the CFT process, we will help families problem solve with their network, address safety, permanency, and well-being, and get back on the road to independence. Let's put this all together. First, we look at what's going on in our case. Are there any worries and questions? Yes. What are they? Who can care for Elroy after school when I start my night shift? How's Dad going to watch Elroy when he always falls asleep? Mr. Jetson always falls asleep in his chair when he gets home from work. I saw them on the freeway out my window. Someone needs to watch that boy or he'll get hurt. We formulate our questions into a worry statement to define our purpose, which is what we want to work on. This is the purpose of the meeting that we write on the first page of the Shared Family Care Plan. Next, we identify our safety stability goal, what we hope to develop an action plan to accomplish by the end of the meeting. We think about how the issues we identified would look if they were resolved and are able to meet the child's safety, permanency, and well-being in those areas. We think about who is relevant to the discussion, who can help us answer the questions and problem solve the issue, and we invite them to the meeting. We do a pre-check with the scheduler and facilitator to identify any concerns about potential violence and safety in the meeting. There are none in this particular case. We decide to hold the meeting at a relative's home to accommodate the family team. Our goal is to continue asking questions and developing a team of people with the family. At least every 2 months or more often if needed, we will convene relevant members of the team to help assess the situation and answer questions and resolve issues that impede progress toward our safety, permanency, and well-being goals for the child and family. Through the CFT process, we will help families problem solve with their network, address safety, permanency, and well-being, back on the road to independence.